I'm really thrilled being here on the panel with a number of the VCs, the impact VCs that's gonna drive the future, I guess. First, before I kick off with questions, I'd like to just give you 45 seconds of individual intros. I think that's at least worth listening to. So, Pavel, maybe you start.
Okay, thank you, Morten. So hi everyone, my name is Pavel Petrek. I come from Tilia Impact Ventures from Prague, Czech Republic. We are first impact fund in the Czech Republic. We are kind of petri dishes of impact investment in Prague to see whether it can work there. And currently preparing second fund because petri dishes are quite successful so far. We are sector agnostic, working mainly in 4 areas: sustainability or circular economy, access to health, quality education, and civic empowerment. So basically these 4 key areas, and we see that it can really work in CEE, so that's why we are preparing the next fund.
Great, I'll take over.
Yeah.
I'm Tomas, GP at Contrarian Ventures. So we're a still small VC fund focused on energy transition and advanced mobility. We're based in Vilnius and London, but focusing on Europe and Israel. Israel being a very important market to us, having people there. Been investing since 2017, now focusing on raising Fund 2, closing Fund 2 early next year, hopefully. Yeah, Copenhagen, Denmark, big market for us as well. Haven't done a deal yet, we're looking at a few opportunities. Happy to share the panel with you guys.
Thanks.
Okay, then I take over. Hi, I'm Daria. I am the co-founder and GP at World Fund. We're the largest European venture capital firm focused on climate tech. In the middle of raising 350 million to deploy in the 5 of the biggest CO2 emitting industries. We don't call ourselves, when we talk about it later, an impact fund. So we're financially driven, but Article 9 compliant, and believe that in the climate tech space, we can generate super returns. It's the biggest opportunity ever for investing in it. But we also believe that, venture capital is a tool to enable entrepreneurs, be as fast as possible, also save the planet from Armageddon.
Great.
Hi, I'm Tomas. I'm from the Social Capital Fund. We've been around for around 10 years now. We're based in Copenhagen. We have a multi-fund strategy. That means we start out with an evergreen fund. We have a fund for small and medium enterprises, and we also have an outcome fund. And we are right now in the middle of a fundraising for our venture fund. We've been working with startups for the past 10 years almost, mainly around Impact Accelerator, and that's what we are establishing a fund around now. So it's going to be a fund that works in Scandinavia, Northern Europe, and looking to invest in companies, startups that focus on education, digital health, what we call sustainable communities, inclusive financial services, and also inclusive work life. So that's the 5 themes that we're working on.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So starting off with the question, I'm urged to say that before emerging or embarking on this 2-year adventure with Climentum, I spent around 20 years in the institutional investing world, and in that world, at least 5-10 years ago, a lot of people thought that impact was really a give up on financial return. So that question really leads me to ask you, Tomas, whether you believe that the impact focus DSK has implies lower financial returns than non-impact funds.
Well, like I said, we've been around for 10 years, and definitely when we started out, there was an insecurity around LPs, around could we, is impact around? Does it make any sense, basically? But I see today that the LPs are focusing on impact. We are creating what we believe to be market, adjusted to the market rate. What's out there? So we don't see any challenges in creating a fund that's both commercially viable but also an impact fund.
And any other comments? Anything you hear from the LPs in the fundraising periods, whether they question that?
Yeah, I can chip in. No, I don't. I think when we spoke to LPs maybe 2 years ago, it was a very different conversation to LPs these days, which is fantastic. I mean, it's funny, everyone's raising all 5 funds, everyone's raising here.
There is a reason
Clearly,
for that, right?
a lot of capital out there. And I think still there's definitely stigmas with LPs about climate, about clean tech. Well, at least, again, like Daria, we're also not purely impact investor, we're more focused on energy transition. There's definitely stigmas with clean tech 1.0, but less and less and less. The massive shoot over the last 6-12 months just sort of skyrocketed the interest. So, that's driven a lot by guys like Daniel Ek from, Spotify's guy, also loves to invest in climate and those kind of technologies. So we don't have this sort of, hey, you're focused on this is totally not going to work, I'm doing a grant for you, or this is a philanthropy for you. Definitely not. And we've seen, at least in the public markets, we've seen companies in oil and gas side, we've seen utilities focus on renewable energy like Iberdrola, Ørsted, and now these guys outperforming the old Exxons, Chevrons of the world. So I think that's kind of the same in the private markets as well. So at least from none of these conversations would start that, hey guys, well, clearly you're not going to return 25% IRR for us, so what else can you do? So
yeah, I think we don't even have this conversation. So as I said, for us, we're very vocal about that we believe that it's about the super returns, but we also talk about climate returns. This is the kind of the maybe it's semantics, but it's also at core our DNA, and we'd say that we strongly believe, and we have the data for that the climate returns are the strongest indicator for the financial performance, and you kind of can't separate these two. And I actually never had this conversation where an LP would question that in a way. All of us, we're a team of 10. We are 3 GPs, 4 partners, and all of us have been investing in climate tech even before it was, climate tech. And we have very strong track record around this space, so we can actually, give examples of how this works. And I think, philanthropy also, there is a huge amount of fantastic teams and startups where you can, where venture capital is not the right tool for them. But I think in terms of the fundraising environment right now, that works very well. So far.
Thanks. Maybe just stay with you, Daria. Given what you've just said, how do you, this is just to play devil's advocate, but how would you, to LPs, give them assurance that you deliver positive impact? And what would the implications be for failing in delivering impact? I know you're not an impact fund, but I'm asking you anyways because you're so tied up to the climate, right?
No, sure. So look, when we make a decision to invest in a company, we have all the same range of criteria a classic venture capital fund would have, but one in addition, right? And this is because for us, we define climate solely around this CO2 reduction KPI. So each startup we invest into has to have a potential and to pass the threshold of a CO2 reduction potential of 100 megaton a year, right? So most of wannabe climate tech companies will not do that, right? It's just in the nature of their business. And just to give you kind of an example, so 100 megaton is 1/8 of the whole German CO2 reduction, CO2 emissions a year. It's 1/4 of UK, right? So each company has to pass this threshold, and we have developed a methodology together with Project Drawdown, which is a kind of an association of leading scientists around the climate topic, and an MIT spin-off measurement tool called Crane and some industry partners. So we spent quite a time to develop a methodology, which allows us to measure that, and we do it like, you know, in kind of on top of the envelope calculation in the very, when we talk to a startup, some are very obviously, you know, in this space, but we do it very quick and dirty in the very beginning, and then when we move along our due diligence, we actually do proper measurement where we have a team allocated for that, and then in the end it's like 25 pages of assessment.
Thanks.
So I can maybe add, for us it's a little bit more complicated because we are not focused on one particular SDG or very limited set. So for CO2, it might be the easier part because you have already many benchmarks. You can, once you do the calculation and you make sure that the business plan is linked to impact plan, and that's when one is reached, the other is reached as well. You can also say, thanks to all these benchmarks, if it's good or good enough, like for delivering that impact. But in the other areas, like access to health, access to education, it's iterative process, and with every single deal that we are taking deeper and basically learning what they can actually achieve, and at the same time finding this link between business plan and the impact plan. We are actually developing even these benchmarks. So rather than committing to particular values to our LPs, we are presenting this methodology. We are making sure that they understand how the process is done, that basically the target within the knowledge for that particular space is challenging enough whenever we set it. And that's it. And we basically try to combine it on all the space where we invest.
Maybe Thomas, you can comment. I mean, I know you guys are exercising dual hurdle rate, and so what will the consequence for you be not delivering on the impacts that you're striving for?
Yeah, I totally agree with Pavel. I mean, because one thing is the green, and I'm not saying green transition is easy, but there's sort of one common denominator in terms of CO2. I think within the social people and society sphere where we work, and we share that with you, Pavel, it's a little bit more complicated. And we spent the last sort of, I would say, like 10 years, trying to develop frameworks around that within each area. And we think we set up some pretty robust frameworks for measuring the impact at a level where it's enough, but doesn't, provide a lot of burden on the companies. We do it we make an impact due diligence on the company as well as a financial, of course. And we try to set up like an impact budget for where is it today and where do you think we can go? What's the potential for this company? And then we measure it on an individual level, but also on a portfolio level. So, and I think actually we need to, especially within the startup area, need to focus also on the portfolio level, because as you know, impact startups can pivot a couple of times over the year, and there might be mission drift and so on. But we measure it on the portfolio level, trying to say this is what we are going to achieve within the lifespan of the fund, and then focus on that.
All right, that's a pretty good bridge to my next question. I think Thomas, maybe you can chip in on that, because it goes. How does your impact perspective affect your venture assessment and due diligence? Does it? Some would claim it would be like a chain around your legs to have a secondary, focus. But can you give a few comments on how it affects your assessment and due diligence?
It's been pretty natural for us. I think most of the entrepreneurs we meet are like-minded about impact. Most of them, ideal ones, sort of would have had some great successes in establishing their own startups and selling them, exiting them for a lot of money before. Like one of our companies in Israel called H2 Pro in hydrogen space, the guy, Talmon, sold Viber, the messaging app, for 900 million. So he's sold another company for, as he says, failure of 200 million only. So he said, look, he came back, he's in his early 40s, want to do something in the impact space, I don't really care about the money. So he's sort of the same type of mindset. What's the most impactful startup and so on. So when we have those conversations with entrepreneurs, we're really on the same page. Obviously, entrepreneurs in the early seed stages don't want to be burdened with massive reporting standards, big 20-page documents every quarter and so on. So you got to have those natural conversations, what can be done. At first, it's harder and takes more time. When you have a team of 5 people, you don't want to tell them, hey guys, you got to measure Scope 3 emissions, or we're out of this. So it's not natural, but yeah, for us, we in the space of climate, the entrepreneurs there speak the same language, so we don't have any hurdles, to be honest.
If I can add to that, I think it's what Pavel said, because if you look at the kind of the climate and then CO2, if it's your core kind of orientation, it has to be linked to your commercial success. Otherwise, and then if it's linked to your commercial success and it's at core one part of your business model or it's part of what you're doing, then it's not a burden because, as I said, if you're successful here, you're going to be successful commercially. And that's probably how we also experience and observe the entrepreneurial thinking.
So there's a high correlation between the two, I guess. All right. Maybe Tomas from DSK. Have you experienced any challenging related to really applying the impact into the way you think and the way you work? I know it's a broad question, and you can just pick and choose.
I don't think so. I mean, we've like I said, we've been around for 10 years, and it's sort of really ingrained in what we do, and it's also ingrained with the companies that we work with, and it's going to be even more ingrained with the startups, I think, because. Obviously, a lot of the companies that we work with in the startup space are sort of born into this area. Like you say, there's a sort of a match between doing business and making impact. So it's not that complicated. But we come out of a period of time where it wasn't ingrained. So we had to work on the metrics and find out how to really get those two to work together, especially in the SME area, with sort of larger companies up to around 300 million Danish kroner in turnover. So, but in startups, I don't think it's a big issue, not with the companies that we meet.
One of the big things in VC funds is not doing the sourcing of the deals; it's getting access to the right deals. Anyone? I'm not being specific, but anyone wanted to comment on being an impact-oriented VC should, to some extent at least, drive impact ventures your way, right? So do you experience that very clearly, or is it are you often competing with generalist, non-impact focused funds around the same deals? I would hope the answer. I know what I would hope to be the answer, but can anyone comment on it? In the accessibility being an impact-oriented VC.
Maybe I think access to deals is always, there are a couple of factors. It's your reputation as an investor. The longer you're in the market and you build a reputation, people want to work with you because in the end of the day, it's a people business, right? It's of course, kind of your network, and that I think being specialized, and by network I mean access to more capital, to talent, to potential customers, to potential partners, to industry, and that you can build much better if you're specialized VC. It doesn't matter if it's impact or climate or social or healthcare, because you're focused on one, you build your network, and it's more relevant for the startups you invest into. And I think that's the biggest value add. And also, you understand at depth the technology, the markets, and then I think this always has the biggest value. And having said that, it's different what kind of startups you look. The competition is higher in one part, and everyone now it's a hype, right? So now everyone is investing in climate tech. We just invested in, for example, in a core company. It's a precision fermentation company based in Munich, with the first use case is a core cacao bean, right? So we did this deal together with 50 Years and Cherry Ventures. Cherry being completely, one is a deep tech fund, the other ones are consumer focused, actually kind of generalist. But I think we're still, And I want to point it out, it's still only 5% of the whole venture capital in Europe, which is invested in climate tech space, 5. So I wish for more competition, because in the same time, different amounts of money, like 30 billion alone is, I think in the last 3 years, were invested in the US and 25 in China. And this money is coming here, right? So I think we need more competition, more dedication, especially, and not only across like whatever calls itself, we're fantastic companies or calling them climate tech, but also technology-driven companies where there's maybe CapEx or a product, deep tech product as a base, and it takes more time and more money to build, and there is not, one day before I go to notary to sign in corporation documentation, I already on my traction, which is stellar, right? This is what exactly everyone is looking. And I think for that, again, it's better to be specialized because you understand the dynamics of the market better.
And that's a super interesting topic. We can maybe have 5 minutes in the end to touch upon the whole US, Europe, but you had a comment, Tom.
I think we are particularly within the social space now, and we've been around so long, so I think we have a strong position in that space, especially in the Nordics. And what we see in terms of startups is that, there's so many accelerators out there, and every startup get an opportunity to work with an accelerator. But we've been fortunate enough to sort of be a place for the social impact startup. So we don't. I think we have a pretty good, position in that space. But obviously, like you said, you have to be specialized. You have to really, focus on what's the core competences. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to attract, the right deals. Yeah.
Just super quickly add, because your question was, do you compete with generalists, and do you get any sort of brownie points for being focused? So we sometimes get calls from the rounds that are almost formed. And then entrepreneur says, look, I got great generalist investors, they're great, they got big AUM, they got a bunch of operational advisors, but we really want someone specialist there on the cap table, as a co-lead, as a lead, or as just a follower, just to have this specificities of climate, whether that's technical advice, whether that's some of the venture partners you have, whether that's the commercial partnerships you have, and so on. So that happens more and more, I would say.
And yeah, it's interesting, because do you think that arises more from the fact that these ventures would like to, it's more like, it's not greenwashing, but it's more like, I really want an impact fund also on our cap table, some of the big ones, and then an impact fund, and that's it? Or is it really because that you and all of you bring impact-related value add to the table? So that's really a related question.
I think it's actually that.
Yeah.
At least from what we experience.
Yeah.
A lot of the founders in this area, they want to stick to the impact. They want to grow a business and a successful business, but they also want to have a close interaction with somebody who has an impact inside.
Yeah, that really is related to my one of my latter questions here. So how you support your portfolio companies in really achieving these agreed impacts, as you also said, Daria. I mean, once we're down in the single venture, we set KPIs on various parameters to really push them and to create the plan that is great. So how do you guys support the portfolio companies specifically? I mean, I don't mean in general, so a long answer, but more, where you have niche support areas where here this is not to be delivered from any other, whatever, generalist, VZ. Anything, Pavel?
Yes, maybe I can start. So we have the advantage that you mentioned in social space. So we have the advantage in the entire impact space in the Czech Republic. So basically, it's just the simple expertise of being of ability to measure, to have like different views from like different tools that are there and frameworks. So that's what we are typically bringing on the table. Plus, for the projects, like having impact fund on the cap table is also kind of commitment. Not just having marketing like, I have some impact fund here, but kind of commitment that they mean it seriously. So it's combination of us helping them to keep on the rail, and at the same time bringing this like expertise of how to measure things, how to work with the entire setup, like maybe building their own theory of change. And
so the impact safeguard, really,
yes,
in the captive.
Exactly.
Maybe if I can just take the last question on a little bit broader note. So basically, you were touching a little bit upon it, Daria, but we are, on the one hand, we're seeing this hype around climate tech and impact ventures and so forth, and we're also seeing from the US lower carbon capital breakthrough and all these huge $800 million funds washing over, coming to Europe also in that sense, So on the one hand, it seems like everything is exploding and it's too crazy. But on the other hand, you're mentioning words or numbers like 5%, and there's really not enough capital. So any perspectives? Maybe you start, Daria, on this. In Europe, we haven't seen this wave, wash over yet. We're just in the beginning of seeing this, right?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why we went for 350 as a first-time fund, which almost everyone told us we are crazy, was that because we see a huge opportunity in this space, but also believe that the biggest global problems around climate, but also around all the other sectors, right, are going to be solved by technology-enabled companies, at least in the climate tech space. And technology-enabled companies are by nature, take longer or take more capital to develop. It can be deep tech enabled, can be hardware, hard tech, whatever names you use, as an opposite to pure digital business models. I'm not valuing that the one is better than the other, but this kind of companies, we have a huge amount of this talent. 1/3 of all leading research institutes is based in Europe in the climate tech space. I think almost 30% of all patents filed in climate tech space are filed in Europe. And there is so much capital that I think we look in the numbers, like alone in Germany, there are 11 trillion euros sitting on bank accounts. And then for some reason, we can't breach that. So they are either smaller and fantastic, smaller kind of emerging managers focusing by nature, again, of raising smaller funds on the early stage or seed, pre-seed kind of space, early Series A. And then there are generalists who are not yet, and then we can maybe breach again the competition question, they're not yet that, that happy to, or that uncomfortable to invest in tech, right? So there is a huge gap. And for us, and this gap is by 30% already now closed by US funds.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and that's why, again, just because you said the competition, I think if you're specialized, and that's what you were also saying from the point of startups, but also for the generalist, if you have a fund who is specialized with a thought leader who understands the markets in this particular space, it's great to have them on board and cooperate instead of being in the competition, because that kind of diligence, you can trust on.
Great. All right, so what I hear from the last comment, at least, is that there is very much room for tons of funds and billions of capital in this direction still. And I guess the 4 players you have here are really spearheading that development. And I think that's very necessary to bring on more capital. What's the timing? I don't have a watch. 10 minutes. All right. Hey, I really wanted to broaden out to the audience for questions. Anyone wanting to ask? Of course.
Is your impact return linked to your carried interest? Any of you?
So for us, again, we don't have an impact return.
But
we
you
have a climate
carbon,
return, but it is linked to carry, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And the same here.
Pavel?
Yes.
Fund 1, no. That was established in 2017. Fund 2, we see increasing push by the big institutional LPs for that half of your carry, of GP carry, to be linked to the impact. I think this is still, I don't know, well, you guys all have it, but I think it's still sort of being created and crystallized properly because it's pretty complicated. But yeah, I think it will be.
Actually, one additional comment to this. What we hear, because we are rising, what we hear from traditional investors, those like untouched by impact investment, they tell us we are crazy. Like how can we commit to something so outside of the profit? So.
And our model is 1/3 is directly linked to impact, not our projected impact, but the realized impact, and that is CO2 emissions. So it's a dual hurdle rate, yeah.
And you even see, just to comment on that, you even see traditional funds now coming out where outcome is linked or impact is linked to the performance of the fund. Yeah. So I think that's the way it's going.
Any other questions to emerging VCs in Europe? Yeah, I think there's a microphone.
Do you see the demands of LPs changing over time? And do you feel like they push more for impact to be realized? Obviously, we just talked about it, but in some cases, there are LPs who don't really care, and they're just like, oh, we want to do some good, but what are some of the things that they demand or ask for?
I see that, and not only because because there's a trend in that direction, a mega trend in that, but also because regulation is pushing in that direction. So the LPs that we're talking to are definitely looking in that direction. They see this. I mean, we've had contact with European investors, fund of funds, and they are sort of looking into what's the next taxonomy coming out of EU and stuff like that. What's the regulation going to come in the future? So.
I'm just taking part of the panel now, so I want to answer your question as well. So what we saw a few years back was more LPs, larger LPs, seeing this. Their questions in that direction were directed towards how much extra cost does it, do you pose to the fund and management fee to have these impact associates and impact partners on the team. Whereas today, just 18 months, 12 months later, they're more turning around with the taxonomy pistol in their head, saying, okay, we want to ensure that you guys have adequate impact teams in your fund to be able to meet our demands. So it's just in 12, 18, 24 months, it's shifted very much. That's my experience.
Yeah.
Or, sorry.
That looked exhausting. Hi. We all agree that the space, it's an ongoing journey, and we're creating literacy as we go along. We're building that plane while we're flying it. I'd like to ask each one of you, how much are you spending internally or in creating literacy about impact? And it goes back to the measurement piece. What is measured today might be changed tomorrow. But how much time do you spend as fund managers, as VC, to create literacy within the fund?
Just to clarify the question, when you say create literacy, you mean educate the companies?
How much do you understand the subject matter? How much do you carry the systemic lens when you do investments?
No.
Yeah, well, very much so, I would say, from our point of view. And I think that's, like I said, is sort of ingrained in our history and the way we were founded 10 years ago. We come out of that area. So it's very much ingrained in what we do, in everything we do. And we also use it in terms of our impact modeling, impact business modeling with companies, and is completely intertwined in that.
Yeah.
Just wanted to comment from our side. I think we have 3 out of 10 people just connected, just working with impact, so that would be 30%. But what I would maybe want to comment to your question, is a great question, is that over just the past few years, we've seen the taxonomy and a lot of regulation that has helped us specify how to measure, how to do things. And I think some of the prior panel discussions were a little bit indicating that we needed to synchronize the way we did things and all that. So basically, I guess, at least from our side, but probably most of us, one of the things is to try to click into these standardized kind of EU measures and so forth, to not do our own proprietary things 10,000 different ways. But I think, yeah, and again, back to my answer before, the LPs really require that you have adequate impact resources doing what you're saying. Any other comments on it?
Oh, I was just going to answer Derek's. We engaged with 3 PhDs from Cambridge over the last 6 months, working on them with the new methodology for measuring this. So putting in quite a lot of resources, both internal and external. This.
And I might add that we are a small team of 5 people, and one of the team is actually specialized only on impact management and all these aspects of impact, making sure that we do it properly for each deal, and at the same time that it's essential part of the whole process. At the beginning, due diligence, and also later during the life cycle of the project.
I think I already said before, we have developed a new methodology where one of our teammates, who is a mathematician, spent a lot of time dedicated to that, together with Project Drawdown. We also have a scientific advisory board, I haven't mentioned that. And Project Drawdown is also part of our scientific advisory board, but when we do we developed the methodology together, and then even when we do the final kind of climate return performance DD, in the end, that we send it to Project Drawdown, and one of our other, it depends on the topic, right? But mostly like to one of the universities in Germany, University Berlin was very helpful. We also have Max Planck and Fraunhofer, and they kind of sign it off and say, okay, that's fine. We believe what you put there.
Cool. I'll put in a question too, as the ending. You mentioned here in your first quote, Daria, that you are related to Article 9. Maybe you can put a few words on what is that actually and how do you do that, because that could be good guidance here for the audience.
Yeah, so Article 9 goes beyond just the impact or climate measurement, and there are, I think, 5 different kind of areas where you do not know significant harm. And then beyond that, I can't tell you how that applies because no one really knows. but
it's the new EU sustainable taxonomy.
Because it's a part of the new EU taxonomy, so we're still learning on that. But we're very lucky because one of my partners, Craig Douglas, he's been with SET Ventures, which is an energy transition fund based in Amsterdam, for the last 10 years, and he actually helped EIF co-develop whole set of measurement tools and then advise many other funds how to apply them. So we kind of had a lot of knowledge on that, but Article 9 is the next step. We'll learn. But it's again requires kind of on terms of reporting and kind of having it in mind, we have to apply the do no significant harm rules. Yeah. Interesting enough, because we're still so we're a German-based fund, and we're regulated by the BaFin, which is the financial authority body. So even though everyone wants that, you have a set of incentives to go for Article 9. In terms of them, their assessment, what has to be done, there is a lot to learn on that side. So we we're experiencing a very interesting conversation right now because they actually have no tools now to proceed with funds of ours. So we'll learn together.
All right, I think really time is up, right? Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.